My best friend slept with my fiancé, reported me to the hospital, and told everyone I had everything while she had nothing. When I confronted her, she tearfully smiled and said, "Finally, Vera will know what it feels like to fail." I stayed, silent, and now, 18 months later, she's the one in tears after losing her badge in the parking lot. You know how some friendships feel like fate? Like you found your soul sister? Well, I thought I had that with Sky. But beneath that dazzling smile, she was meticulously planning to destroy everything I held dear, my career, my reputation, even my love life. And I never, ever saw it coming. Sky was my college roommate, and honestly, she felt like a gift. Looking back, the red flags were blazing, but when you're a young, lonely nursing student, you don't question why someone wants to be your friend. You're just grateful. Sky was everything I wasn't. Effortlessly charismatic, beautiful in a way that made scrubs look like designer wear. She could charm professors into extensions while I was pulling all-nighters like a caffeinated zombie. I helped her through every single exam, hours of teaching, color-coded notes, practice drills. She'd cry about her learning disability, her tough childhood, how nursing was her only way out. And like a fool, I fell for it every time. But it wasn't a one-way street, at least not at first. She taught me how to apply makeup, introduced me to her friends, and set me up with Lee, the absolute love of my life. Or so I thought. She always reminded me how lost I'd be without her, how no one else would put up with my quirks. The manipulation was subtle, a constant drip you barely noticed. If I got praise, she'd suddenly have a crisis. If I mentioned a goal, she'd already been planning the same thing. When I made new friends, she'd swoop in, befriend them too, and make plans without me. She was like a parasite, not killing her host, just slowly feeding. We graduated together, even worked at the same hospital. I thrived in the chaos, she thrived in the gossip, but we were inseparable. She was my maid of honor. I was her emergency contact. Classic toxic friendship, masquerading as ride or die loyalty. Then things changed. I got promoted to charge nurse and engaged to Lee. That's when Sky's mask started slipping. Like cheap foundation, it cracked. She'd call out sick on my shifts, always having emergencies that only I could help with. She'd show up to work looking like she'd been crying, letting everyone see how stressed she was, how I was too busy with my perfect life to support her. Then, the bottom fell out. The medication error happened on a night she called out. I'd worked 16 hours straight, mixed up 2 similar vials. I caught it immediately, thought no harm done. But when I mentioned it to Sky, she reported it for patient safety. The tears she cried while doing it, Oscar-worthy. I lost the cardiac unit position, got put on probation. I spent a week wondering how I'd screwed up so badly. And then I came home early from a shift, and I found her in my bed. With Lee. She actually had the audacity to say I couldn't be mad, that I had everything while she had nothing. Lee, the absolute love of my life, chose her. Men sometimes choose the shinier option. I moved out that night, packing in a blur of hurt and rage, and by accident, I grabbed her journal. Same purple cover as mine, but the darkness inside. It was a whole different beast. 6 months of documented sabotage. It was like reading a serial killer's manifesto, but for friendship. She'd been switching our schedules, taking credit for my work, telling Lee I was cheating, telling colleagues I was burned out, building her case like a prosecutor with a grudge. The final entry made me vomit. Actually, physically vomit. She'd planned the medication error. Knew exactly which night to call out, which vials looked similar, how exhausted I'd be. Vera will finally understand what it's like to fail, she wrote. I sat on my bathroom floor until sunrise, a cold dread washing over me. How long had she been out to get me? Then I got analytical. Sky's fatal flaw. She was a fraud wrapped in charisma. Without me carrying her, she was just a mediocre nurse with excellent social skills, like a designer handbag with nothing inside. Time to remove her safety net. I started simple. Anonymous recommendations to management, praising her hidden talents, suggesting she lead complex procedures, take on critical patients, make her shine. Without me, she floundered like a fish out of water. Then I worked carefully, strategically. Made friends with nurses on other floors, never mentioning our history, just building professional relationships, encouraging healthy boundaries, no more covering for colleagues who couldn't handle their assignments. Sky's support system evaporated like alcohol swabs. The emergency simulation was poetry, pure poetry. I'd volunteered as an observer. Sky got selected as team leader, her big chance to shine. She panicked, completely, made every wrong call. Her team refused to back her and demanded a new leader. The review board opened an investigation. Dominoes fell like a beautiful disaster. License suspended. Remedial training required. She works reception now. Answers phones, files papers, watches real nurses do what she never could. I became a clinical educator, teaching about integrity, living my best life while she was stuck in her worst. Justice, served colder than hospital coffee. But then the letter came. A legal letterhead. My stomach dropped. Inside were court documents. Sky was suing me for intellectual property theft, defamation, and career destruction. She had evidence, 3 years of preparation. She'd played the long game, and I never saw it coming. The parasite had found a way to finally, truly, unalive its host. My hands trembled as I set the papers down. The lawsuit claimed I'd stolen her training materials, her methodologies, even her teaching style. 3 years of documentation, screenshots of my presentations that borrowed heavily from her work, emails where I'd supposedly taken credit for her innovations. My phone buzzed, a notification from our hospital's social media group. Sky had posted a video, tears streaming down her face, talking about workplace bullying and finding the courage to stand up for herself. Within minutes, dozens of reactions, hearts, angry faces, comments pouring in about toxic work environments, supporting victims. Nurses I'd trained were asking questions. Former colleagues expressed shock. The video already had over 200 shares in our local nursing community. My reputation, built over years of dedication, was crumbling in real time. The next morning, desperate for normalcy, I drove to the grocery store. I was comparing prices on pasta when I spotted her. Sky stood by the pharmacy counter, her perfectly styled hair catching the fluorescent lights. Our eyes met across the cereal aisle. My lawyer's words echoed in my head. No contact, none. Document everything. I turned my cart around, heading for produce. Footsteps followed. I grabbed bananas, checking my peripheral. She was 3 aisles over, parallel to me. Dairy. She appeared moments later, examining yogurt. My heart pounded as I documented the pattern on my phone, trying to look casual while typing notes about her location and behavior. Her breathing had quickened, that same shallow, rapid pattern from college when she'd lie about missing assignments. Some things never change. I abandoned my half-full cart and headed for the exit. She followed all the way to the parking lot, maintaining distance but clearly trailing me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands shaking, typing everything into my phone. Timestamps, locations, her behavior. No witnesses, no security cameras at the right angles. Just my word against hers. I called my lawyer from the parking lot. He listened, then delivered the reality check. Without video or witnesses, reporting stalking would make me look paranoid, obsessed, playing right into her narrative as the aggressor. Document everything, he advised. Build our defense. Don't give her ammunition. 3 days later, Dr. Chen called. My mentor from my early nursing days needed someone to cover her testimony in a malpractice case. The timing was terrible, conflicting with a crucial meeting with my lawyer. But whoever helped her would have her support in any legal matter. Her word carried weight. Influence I desperately needed. I knew Sky would jump at this chance too. We'd both worked under Dr. Chen, though I'd been her preferred student. The choice felt impossible: miss the lawyer meeting and potentially hurt my defense, or pass up Dr. Chen's support when I needed every ally I could get. I watched Sky's social media that evening. She'd posted about exciting opportunities and being grateful for mentors who believed in her. The subtext was clear. She was going after Dr. Chen's favor too. I chose Dr. Chen, spent hours preparing her testimony, organizing documentation, ensuring everything was perfect. My lawyer rescheduled, understanding the strategic value, but those lost hours cost me. While I was at the courthouse with Dr. Chen, Sky filed a restraining order request. The documents painted me as unstable, obsessive, dangerous. She'd included screenshots of every time I'd viewed her social media profiles, every interaction we'd had since the lawsuit began. An emergency hearing was scheduled for next week. Then everything exploded at once. My student loan servicer sent a notice about wage garnishment. The lawsuit had flagged my accounts. My mother called the same day. Emergency gallbladder surgery. No insurance would cover it fully. The bills would be astronomical. And my lawyer's retainer was due. 3 financial crises converging like a perfect storm. I drained my retirement savings for Mom's surgery. What choice did I have? She'd sacrificed everything for my education. But Sky's lawyer spun it differently in their filing. I was depleting assets, they claimed, hiding resources I'd hoped to recover by destroying their client's career. Even helping my mother became evidence against me. The hospital break room buzzed with gossip the next week. Sky had a panic attack during shift report when someone mentioned the lawsuit. A real hyperventilating, tearful panic attack. Colleagues rushed to comfort her, fetching water, calling for help. The security footage would show genuine distress. I heard about it third hand, banned from that floor by HR during the legal proceedings. My teenage cousin even started defending Sky online that evening, posting about how Sky had helped her through an eating disorder 2 years ago. How she couldn't believe someone so caring was being attacked. The post got shared throughout our extended family, my own blood choosing sides based on old kindnesses. I was early for a meeting with hospital administration when I stopped by the cafeteria. Sky sat 3 tables away. Her work bag was open beside her. My breath caught. Peeking from the bag were training materials I'd created. My distinctive color coding system visible on the tabs. The urge to photograph them was overwhelming. Evidence, right there. But I couldn't. Any approach would be documented as harassment. Any photo, proof I'd violated the no-contact advisory. She'd positioned herself perfectly. Evidence visible, but untouchable. Later, security footage surfaced from the day materials went missing from my office. It showed me near Sky's locker, though I'd simply been retrieving my own items from the adjacent one. The angle made it look suspicious. The timestamp matched her claims. Another piece of manufactured evidence falling into place. Then, the new director of nursing position opened unexpectedly. The previous director had left detailed protocols, but only a few people understood the systems. I should have been the obvious choice, having worked closely with her. But after my breakdown and the ongoing legal issues, Sky maintained those connections. She positioned herself as the stable, reliable option. My therapist, trying to help, made things worse. She noted in a session that my feelings of persecution echoed my behavior after my father's death. How I'd seen conspiracies then too, blamed others for my grief. She meant it therapeutically, but somehow, those session notes surfaced in court documents. The comparison was damning. Just like when Dad died, a pattern of instability. The hospital's group text became a minefield. Every time I tried to defend myself, explain my side, Sky would screenshot it. Her lawyer reframed each message as harassment. My attempts to maintain professional relationships became evidence of my inability to respect boundaries. I stopped responding, but silence was interpreted as admission of guilt. My LinkedIn activity became evidence too. Every search for former colleagues who might support me was documented as cyberstalking. Friend requests to people who'd witnessed Sky's incompetence were painted as attempts to manipulate witnesses. Even professional networking became sinister in their narrative. The cruelest blow came when I discovered Sky had inherited my login credentials to the hospital's training database. I'd created that system, spent years building it. Now she controlled access to my own work, years of training materials, all under her control. My own passwords, saved in the system from when I trusted her, now used against me. 72 hours without sleep preparing my defense left me exhausted. I stumbled during a clinical education session, mixing up terms I'd taught hundreds of times. Students noticed, reported concerns about my fitness to teach. The exhaustion From fighting the lawsuit became evidence of my instability. Catherine, my closest nursing friend, the one who'd stood by me through everything, called me crying. Her husband had given her an ultimatum. The drama was affecting their marriage. He was tired of hearing about depositions and lawsuits. Either she stepped back from supporting me, or he'd file for divorce. She believed me, she said, but she couldn't lose her marriage over this. I told her I understood. What else could I say? The isolation was systematic. Local nurses crossed hallways to avoid me. The unstable educator, the one who destroyed a colleague out of jealousy. I saw my name in a screenshot someone sent me from the hospital's unofficial warning group chat. 47 members all discussing whether I was safe to work with. Sky's first real mistake gave me hope. She claimed she'd never accessed my training materials, but incomplete records from a system migration showed otherwise. The timestamps didn't align with her story. Finally, evidence of her lies. But even that victory felt hollow when I realized how much damage was already done. My best remaining ally, Johnny from pediatrics, admitted the truth over coffee. He needed Sky's recommendation for an ICU position, his dream job. He couldn't afford to be seen supporting me. The pragmatism hurt more than outright betrayal. Proving Sky lied about one certification opened another problem. To show she wasn't qualified, I had to admit I'd let her observe restricted procedures, a technical violation of hospital policy. Being right made me liable. Every truth revealed another trap she'd set. My lawyer and I shared a glass of wine after a small victory in discovery. Someone photographed us through the restaurant window. By morning, the image was evidence of my lack of remorse, celebrating while Sky suffered. The narrative wrote itself. We both sat in mediation that afternoon, the reality finally clear. This would end with one of our careers destroyed. No middle ground existed. No compromise would satisfy what had started. 3 years of preparation on her side. 3 years of blind trust on mine. The mediator looked between us, seeing two professional women who'd once been inseparable. But only one of us had planned for this moment. Only one of us had built a case brick by brick, document by document, lie by lie. I walked out knowing I was fighting for my professional life. But at least now I knew what I was fighting. The parasite had revealed itself fully. Time to see if the host could survive. Marcus from respiratory therapy had always been supportive during my clinical education sessions. He'd ask thoughtful questions, volunteer for demonstrations, and defend my teaching methods. The week after mediation, I noticed him sitting with Sky in the cafeteria, their heads bent close together, sharing what looked like an intimate conversation. My stomach twisted as I watched her touch his arm, that same gesture she'd used to manipulate Lee. By the following Monday, they were officially dating. The hospital grapevine buzzed with the news. Marcus posted about finding someone who understood workplace trauma, who'd survived professional attacks with grace. Sky commented with heart emojis and my favorite medical joke about IV pumps having commitment issues. The same joke I'd told during orientation every semester. She delivered it naturally, like it had always been hers. During my deposition, I described the medication error incident in precise detail, the 16-hour shift, the similar vials, the immediate correction. My lawyer nodded, taking notes. Sky's deposition told a different story. She'd warned me about fatigue, suggested I take a break. I dismissed her concerns, she claimed, too proud to admit exhaustion. Both versions felt true in our minds. Memory had become another battlefield. Preparing for the next hearing, I searched my old emails for evidence. Instead, I found messages I'd sent to management 3 years ago. Glowing recommendations about Sky's initiative, her growth, her dedication to patient care. My own words contradicted everything I now claimed about her incompetence. The emails had been written when I believed in her, when her success felt like my success. Now they were weapons aimed at my credibility. A nursing student approached me after clinical rotation, looking uncomfortable. She mentioned that Miss Sky had told their class about our history, how I used to take credit for collaborative work, how jealousy over her natural connections with patients and staff had driven me to sabotage her career. The student shifted, nervously, adding that Sky had seemed so genuine, so hurt by the betrayal. Hospital security pulled footage from 3 years ago for the discovery process. Neither of us expected the old system to have retained data that long. The grainy video showed moments I'd forgotten. Sky staying late to help with my presentations, me leaving early while she finished paperwork. Scenes that supported her narrative of carrying more weight than I'd acknowledged. Truth became relative, dependent on which moments you chose to examine. The Labor Relations Board reviewed my formal complaints against Sky without concrete proof of her incompetence predating the emergency simulation. They treated my claims as potential defamation. An investigator asked pointed questions about my motivations. Why had I waited until after her lawsuit to raise these concerns? Where was the documentation from when we worked together? My explanations sounded hollow, even to my own ears. I spent days analyzing my own access logs for the training database. The metadata revealed Sky's pattern of downloading my materials. Monthly access for 3 years. Her recent bulk downloads were even labeled evidence in the file system. But proving she'd stolen intellectual property required showing she'd used it without permission. Her position as my former training partner complicated ownership claims. Sky's LinkedIn became a timeline of strategic positioning. Posts about overcoming workplace adversity appeared months before any actual incidents. She'd been building her victim narrative while I remained oblivious. Each post garnered sympathy from nursing professionals who didn't know our history. The comment section became her support network, full of encouragement for her bravery and speaking out. My own blog posts about dealing with workplace betrayal became evidence against me. Sky's lawyer submitted them as proof of obsessive fixation. The posts, written in raw, emotional moments, painted me as someone unable to move forward, someone who dwelled on grievances. The therapeutic writing I'd done to process trauma now demonstrated my instability to the court. My lawyer filed a motion to compel production of Sky's training records. Legal discovery would force her to provide documentation instead of relying on my failed personal attempts to gather evidence. The motion meant she'd have to submit her certifications, continuing education records, and performance evaluations. She'd either have to produce documents or face sanctions for withholding them. The continuing education deadline created unexpected leverage. Sky needed me to sign off on hours she'd completed under my supervision in previous years. Without my signature, she'd lose her educator certification. Her lawyer sent a formal request. I had the power to impact her career with a simple signature. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. A key witness from the emergency simulation contacted me privately. She remembered Sky's panic, the poor decisions, the team's frustration. But an anonymous ethics complaint had been filed against her. Her job security was now in question. She had 3 kids to feed. She explained she couldn't risk her position by testifying. Another ally lost to Sky's strategic pressure. I noticed Sky wearing the scrubs I'd designed for our education team, the custom embroidery I'd arranged. She used my documentation templates in her new role. Even her highlighting system mimicked mine. Pink for medications, yellow for procedures, green for patient notes. She'd absorbed my professional identity like a sponge absorbing water. Her lawyer sent a settlement offer. Dropped the lawsuit if I wrote a letter of recommendation and publicly apologized for misunderstanding our friendship, acknowledged that professional disagreements had been blown out of proportion, and admitted that we'd both contributed to a toxic dynamic. The letter would be published in our hospital newsletter, clearing her reputation while subtly admitting my fault. I refused. My lawyer warned that the refusal would be presented as evidence, framed as prioritizing vengeance over professional reconciliation. The mediator would see me as the unreasonable party, but I couldn't sign a lie, couldn't give her the final tool to rewrite our history. Some principles mattered more than strategic advantage. Reviewing security footage for my defense, I discovered I'd been wrong about one detail. The schedule switch hadn't happened on the night I remembered. Different elevator footage showed me taking the south elevators, not the north ones I'd sworn I used. The error shook my confidence. If I was wrong about that, what else had my memory distorted? Sky's lawyer would use this discrepancy to question everything I claimed. Our former manager had left the hospital, but her files remained, buried, in an unexpected personnel folder. We found documented concerns about Sky, not in the official performance reviews, but in private notes. Observations about her tendency to claim others' work, her pattern of befriending high performers. The documentation predated our conflict, but accessing it required a court order. My efforts to help Sky with accommodations became evidence against me. Her lawyer twisted years of support into patronizing behavior. I'd created dependence, they argued, to maintain superiority. Every study guide I'd made, every extra tutoring session, now proved I'd wanted her to need me. My genuine desire to help transformed into psychological manipulation in their narrative. Mom faced an impossible choice. Supporting my legal battle meant losing her friendship with Sky's mother from book club. They'd grown close over the years, bonding over their daughter's friendship. Sky's mother believed her daughter's version of events. Mom choosing neutrality meant I lost access to historical text messages and photos from nursing school that might have helped my case. I started building strategic relationships within the legal system. The law firm's receptionist struggled with continuing education requirements for her pharmacy tech certification. I genuinely helped her find resources, study materials, free courses. Through our conversations, I learned about filing patterns, which lawyers were assigned to which cases when documents typically moved through the system. The medical library held restricted employment records from our hospital system. I manufactured a chance encounter there, researching legitimate education topics while Sky happened to be accessing the same section. We discussed the weather, careful to maintain appropriate distance, but her files were visible on the table. My phone captured what I could without obvious photography. Evidence gathered in plain sight. Shared cloud storage from our education department revealed patterns I'd missed. Sky had claimed others' work across multiple jobs before our hospital. The same methodology: befriend high performers, gradually claim credit, position herself as the victim when confronted. 3 previous positions showed similar trajectories. I'd been part of a pattern, not a unique situation. Lee reached out through his lawyer. His conscience had been bothering him. He wanted to testify about Sky's manipulation, how she'd convinced him I was cheating, how she'd orchestrated their relationship. But he worried about retaliation. Sky had information about his own professional mistakes. The price of his testimony might be his career. We negotiated carefully, lawyer to lawyer. Fighting Sky while negotiating with Lee meant missing a crucial deadline. My educator recertification lapsed. The state registry marked me as non-compliant. Another professional consequence of the legal battle. My identity as an educator, built over years, crumbled with a single missed date. Sky's plan claimed another victory through distraction and exhaustion. Credit cards maxed out from legal fees while Sky fundraised successfully. Her GoFundMe page for workplace survivors had raised thousands. Colleagues who'd never experienced her manipulation donated generously. The financial imbalance meant she could afford better lawyers, more extensive discovery, prolonged litigation. Money became another weapon in her arsenal. The nursing school reunion committee faced a delicate situation. Both Sky and I were invited. Multiple classmates expressed concerns about potential drama. The solution was strategic seating, opposite ends of the venue. The careful orchestration highlighted how our conflict had infected every professional space. Even celebrations required careful management to prevent confrontation. I lost my clinical educator position that month. The official reasons cited ongoing legal issues affecting student perception. My replacement was Sky's friend from reception, someone who'd never taught before but had the right connections. I cleaned out my office while Sky moved into the space. She redecorated immediately, hanging photos of her journey, her survival, her triumph over workplace bullying. Living in a studio apartment became my new reality. Legal fees had drained everything. Meanwhile, Sky occupied my former office, my former role, my former life. The reversal was complete. She'd taken everything professionally while painting herself as the victim. The parasite had consumed the host and now wore its skin. My nursing school advisor requested a meeting. She begged me to let go before it destroyed everything I'd built. "You're becoming someone I don't recognize," she said. The compassionate educator she'd mentored had transformed into someone driven by vengeance. Her words stung because they held truth. The fight had changed me in ways I couldn't undo. My investigation into Sky's past caused unintended damage. A former colleague who'd worked with her got audited for documentation practices. The audit stemmed from questions I'd raised about old training records. He spent overtime fixing years of paperwork while missing his daughter's recital. His marriage strained under the pressure, collateral damage I hadn't anticipated. I couldn't stop the investigation despite seeing his stress. Protecting future victims required exposing Sky's pattern. I privately funded his audit defense, anonymously paying his lawyer. Guilt and determination warred within me. Every victory came with a cost, paid by innocents caught in our conflict. My last supporter asked the question I'd been avoiding. What if the jury believed her? What if her tears, her documentation, her narrative convinced them? I couldn't answer immediately. The possibility that truth might lose to performance terrified me. Justice wasn't guaranteed just because I was right. Maintaining credibility meant admitting my own failures. I publicly acknowledged boundary violations in college, times I'd done Sky's work entirely instead of teaching her. Moments when I'd enabled her dependence. The admissions were strategic, preventing Sky's lawyer from revealing them dramatically. But each confession chipped away at my image as the wronged party. Old clinical logs revealed what I'd missed for years. Sky had systematically taken credit for others' work across multiple departments. The pattern was obvious in hindsight. Nurses I'd thought were exaggerating had tried to warn me, but I'd been too blinded by friendship to see what was clearly documented. My willful ignorance had enabled years of theft. Sky's lawyer filed a motion to set the trial date. My attorney was pregnant, due date approaching fast. The scheduling pressure was intentional. They knew we'd have limited availability, might need to accept unfavorable dates or risk delays that would drain more resources. Legal maneuvering had become chess, each move calculated for maximum pressure. During a pretrial conference, Sky's motivation finally emerged. Years of being seen as less talented despite working twice as hard. Always in my shadow despite her superior people skills. The lawsuit wasn't just about revenge. She genuinely believed she deserved recognition for work she'd improved through her social intelligence. Her pain mixed with manipulation in ways that made her dangerous and sympathetic simultaneously. Discovery required aggressive tactics that violated every professional courtesy I'd once valued. Subpoenas for private communications, depositions of uninvolved colleagues, requests for irrelevant documents to increase pressure. The ethical educator I'd been would have been horrified, but she was dead. The strategic survivor had replaced her. Sky's elderly mother visited the clinic for routine care. During casual conversation, she expressed concern about her daughter's obsession with that Vera girl. The fixation had lasted years, she said. Sky talked about me constantly, planned her career moves around mine. The mother's worry was genuine. Her voluntary disclosure became evidence of Sky's long-term focus on me. Getting the restraining order request dismissed felt like a minor victory. But watching Sky cry over our old pinning ceremony photo during the hearing revealed the human cost. We'd once promised to support each other through everything. Now we sat in a courtroom trying to destroy each other, both grieving the friendship that had defined our early careers. Her counterclaim for emotional distress gained traction after her therapist testified. The stress had caused physical symptoms: insomnia, weight loss, panic attacks in hospital settings. The judge listened, sympathetically as her therapist described the trauma of professional betrayal. My actions, justified or not, had caused documented harm. Everything hinged on the emergency simulation evaluator's testimony. She held the objective truth about Sky's performance that day. Her evaluation could prove incompetence or support Sky's claim of unfair testing conditions. The evaluator had remained neutral throughout the conflict, but her testimony would tip the scales. Both legal teams prepared for this crucial witness. Past kindnesses became leverage in unexpected ways. Sky's teenage sister reached out, confused and hurt. I'd helped her with college applications years ago. Now she asked why I was trying to ruin Sky's life. The conversation revealed how thoroughly Sky had crafted her victim narrative within the family. Even genuine past connections were weaponized. Colleagues chose sides based on pragmatic calculations. Who could advance their careers? Who would create less departmental friction? The political maneuvering resembled a congressional vote more than professional relationships. Alliances shifted, based on perceived advantage rather than truth or loyalty. Defamation law revealed complexities I hadn't anticipated. Skye claimed limited public figure status as a healthcare educator, proving actual malice required showing she knew her statements were false when made. Truth was easier to prove than her knowledge of that truth. Legal technicalities threatened to override factual accuracy. I called in every favor from nurses I'd trained who now held influential positions. Years of mentorship became currency in the legal battle. Some provided statements, others shared information. A few offered strategic support, but each favor called was a chip cashed. A relationship forever altered by the request. Former students offered partial support, but wouldn't risk formal testimony. New licenses were too precious to jeopardize. They'd seen Skye's incompetence but couldn't afford to be involved. Their careers came first, as they should. I understood, but felt the isolation deepen with each polite refusal. The next morning, I reviewed the metadata evidence one more time. 3 years of monthly downloads. Skye accessing my training materials like clockwork, building her case while I remained oblivious. Every coffee chat we'd shared during those years had been evidence gathering. She'd documented our conversations, twisted my words, prepared for this moment while I thought we were friends. The revelation hit harder than any legal document. 2 years before the emergency simulation, she'd started filing hostile work environment claims. Internal memos I'd never seen, complaints about feeling overshadowed, documentation of every time I'd received recognition. She'd been constructing her victim narrative while I celebrated what I thought were shared successes. My lawyer presented the metadata analysis to the court. The forensic expert confirmed the authenticity despite Skye's attempts to alter timestamps. Her manipulation attempts actually strengthened our evidence. Failed cover-ups often reveal more than successful ones. The judge took notice of the pattern. Hospital archives proved devastating to Skye's timeline. She'd claimed to have created certain protocols that predated her employment by 6 months. The impossibility was undeniable. Original documents bore my digital signature, my creation dates, my intellectual property markers. Her overconfidence had led to claiming ownership of work created before she'd even graduated, the courtroom filled with our entire nursing department. For the final hearings, forced to choose sides through testimony, colleagues revealed unexpected alliances. The seating arrangements alone told stories. Former friends sat apart. Mentors avoided their mentees. The professional community we'd both loved had fractured beyond repair. Both Skye and I showed the physical toll through hand tremors and stress-induced psoriasis. Months of legal battles had aged us years. The bright-eyed nursing students we'd been seemed like different people entirely. Stress manifests in ways makeup can't hide. Truth emerged through methodical presentation of personnel files and training records. Each document built upon the last, creating an undeniable pattern. Skye's theft wasn't limited to my work. She'd taken credit from multiple colleagues across different departments. The scope shocked even me. The HR director provided unexpected corroboration, protecting the hospital from liability. Under oath, she couldn't lie about documentation she'd personally filed. Her testimony confirmed concerns about Skye that predated our conflict. Professional integrity trumped personal preferences when legal consequences loomed. The judge ordered comprehensive forensic analysis of all training materials, psychological evaluations for both parties. The court wanted complete understanding before rendering judgment. We submitted to hours of assessment. Our professional lives dissected by strangers. Digital forensics revealed the full extent of Skye's deception. Not just copying my work, but attempting to backdate her own files, creating false timestamps, manipulating metadata. Each failed attempt strengthened the authenticity of genuine evidence. Technology became the witness that couldn't be intimidated. The evidence proved systematic theft while also revealing my enabling behavior. I'd maintained shared accounts out of friendship, given her access she shouldn't have had, ignored obvious warning signs. Codependency didn't excuse theft, but it explained how it flourished unchecked for years. During her testimony, Skye's breakdown revealed genuine delusion. She truly believed she'd improved my work through her social intelligence, that her ability to present it better meant she deserved credit. The tears were real. The belief was real. The theft was still theft. Her conviction that collaboration meant ownership showed how differently we'd viewed our relationship. Where I saw mentorship, she saw partnership. Where I saw help, she saw shared creation. The fundamental misunderstanding had poisoned everything that followed. The judge offered me unusual influence over settlement terms. Given the clear evidence of intellectual property theft, I could pursue full damages or request alternative resolution. Financial compensation was available, but something else mattered more: professional vindication, public acknowledgement of my work. I chose reputation over money. Asked for formal recognition of my intellectual property rights, public acknowledgement in professional forums, restoration of my credentials and positions. Money could be earned again. A professional reputation, once destroyed, rarely recovered, fully. The court mandated specific remedies. Sky's nursing license would be permanently restricted to non-educational roles. She could practice bedside nursing, but never teach, never claim educator status. The limitation fit the crime. She could help patients, but not shape future nurses. All my training materials were formally recognized as my intellectual property. The hospital had to acknowledge my creation of their education systems. Professional publications would print corrections. The truth would be documented in permanent records. The nursing community divided predictably. Those who'd witnessed Sky's pattern felt vindicated. Those who'd believed her victim narrative struggled to accept the evidence. Department meetings would never feel the same. Trust, once broken at that scale, doesn't fully heal. Some colleagues were lost forever. They'd chosen sides based on personal benefit rather than truth. Others respected me more for fighting despite the cost. The battle had revealed character throughout our professional community. Not all revelations were pleasant. I rebuilt my reputation slowly, with a permanent weariness. Every new professional relationship began with careful documentation, clear contracts, protected intellectual property, defined boundaries. The trusting educator was gone. The protected professional remained. New teaching opportunities emerged. But I approached them differently. Every training material bore copyright notices. Every collaboration had written agreements. Every mentorship maintained professional distance. Hard-won boundaries that should have existed from the beginning. I developed seminars on professional ethics and intellectual property protection. Taught other healthcare educators to protect their work. Shared my story as a cautionary tale. The painful experience became valuable teaching material. Sky found work at a different hospital. Bedside nursing only, no teaching responsibilities. The grapevine reported she was competent enough with direct supervision. Without the pressure to excel beyond her abilities, she functioned adequately. Perhaps that's all she'd ever needed. Lee never testified. His conscience wasn't stronger than his self-preservation. I understood. Not everyone could afford the cost of truth. His absence from the proceedings spoke volumes about choices and consequences. Mom's surgery recovery coincided with a legal resolution. She'd maintained her neutrality throughout, preserving her book club friendship. I didn't blame her. The conflict had already claimed enough relationships. Some bridges were worth preserving, even if they led to uncomfortable places. The financial recovery took years. Legal fees had drained everything. But slowly, steadily, I rebuilt. Better contracts meant better compensation. Protected work meant sustainable income. The studio apartment gave way to something better. Not what I'd had before, but enough. Former students reached out after the verdict. They'd wanted to support me, but couldn't risk their licenses. Now they offered retroactive encouragement. I accepted it gracefully. Everyone had to protect their own interests first. That was the lesson Sky had taught me. The clinical educator position I'd lost wasn't restored. That department had moved on, found new dynamics, but other opportunities emerged. Hospitals that valued intellectual property protection, institutions that appreciated documented competence. My reputation preceded me now, for better or worse. I dated cautiously. Trust came slowly after Lee's betrayal, but eventually I found someone who understood boundaries, who respected professional independence, who signed prenups without taking offense. Love looked different after learning its potential cost. The emergency simulation evaluator became a professional ally. Her testimony had been crucial. We developed training programs together, built on proper documentation and clear ownership. Professional relationships could exist without personal entanglement. Catherine eventually reached out. Her marriage had survived her withdrawal from my drama. She expressed regret, but not apology. I understood the distinction. We maintained cordial professional distance. Some friendships couldn't be rebuilt, only acknowledged. The lawsuit's resolution made small waves in nursing education circles. Not headlines, just professional awareness. Intellectual property mattered. Documentation protected. Boundaries prevented exploitation. Quiet lessons that rippled through our community. I kept Sky's journal, the purple cover that had revealed everything. Evidence of how long she'd planned, how carefully she'd documented. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators look like friends. That trust should be earned, not given freely. Years later, we passed in a medical conference hallway. Both older, both changed by our conflict. She nodded. I nodded. We continued in opposite directions. Some stories don't get epilogues. Some conflicts just end. The parasite metaphor felt different in retrospect. Parasites were mindless, driven by instinct. Sky had been deliberate, calculating, but also desperate. Desperate to be seen as talented, desperate to escape my shadow. Desperation driving destruction. My new office had locks, digital and physical security. Passwords changed monthly. Files backed up in triplicate. Trust but verify became verify then trust. The innocent educator who'd shared everything was a cautionary memory. I taught new nurses about more than clinical skills, professional boundaries, intellectual property, documentation for protection, not just patient care. The lessons that nursing school didn't cover but careers depended on. The legal documents lived in a safety deposit box. Proof of ownership, evidence of vindication, protection against future claims, paper shields against professional predators, the cost of hard-won wisdom. My story became a teaching tool at conferences. How mentorship could become exploitation. How friendship could mask theft. How trust required boundaries. Painful lessons delivered to prevent others' pain. The hospital where we'd both worked implemented new policies. Clear ownership of educational materials, protected databases, written agreements for collaborative work. My conflict with Sky had changed institutional practices. I sometimes wondered, what might have been different if I'd maintained boundaries from the beginning? If I'd recognized the red flags? If I'd protected my work? But regret was unproductive. The past informed the future without defining it. Professional success returned gradually. Not the meteoric rise I'd once envisioned, but sustainable. Growth built on protected foundations, documented achievements, clear ownership. The slower path proved more stable. The nursing community learned to navigate our divided loyalties. Professional events required careful planning. Continuing education meant checking attendee lists. The fractures remained but became manageable. Time scarred over what it couldn't heal. My new normal included legal consciousness in every professional. Decision. Contracts for everything. Documentation as protection. Boundaries as default. The price of professional survival in a world where friendship could be weaponized. The studio apartment years taught valuable lessons. How little we actually need. How much we take for granted. How quickly life could change. How slowly it rebuilt. Humility, born from loss. I created new training materials, better than before, because they were protected from the start. Innovation flourished within boundaries. Creativity thrived with security. The paradox of freedom through restriction. Sky's story spread through whispered warnings. New educators learned to protect their work. Seasoned professionals shared similar experiences. My public fight had given others permission to acknowledge their own exploitation. The verdict had been clear: intellectual property theft, professional misconduct, restricted license, legal vindication. But victory felt hollow when it came at such a cost. Justice and satisfaction weren't synonymous. I built new professional relationships with clear expectations, collaboration agreements, defined ownership, protected innovations, the infrastructure of sustainable professional growth, trust through verification. My seminars on professional protection filled quickly. Healthcare workers hungry for knowledge about protecting their intellectual property. Stories shared of similar exploitation, community built through common caution. The financial stability returned eventually. Not wealth, but security. Enough to rebuild savings. Enough to help mom without depleting everything. Enough to know I'd survived the worst professional crisis imaginable. New colleagues knew my history. The educator who'd fought for her work. Who'd won, but at great cost. Who taught protection alongside clinical skills. Reputation as both cautionary tale and success story. I never forgot the feeling of discovering betrayal. The physical illness of reading that journal. The shock of premeditated destruction. Those memories informed every professional decision. Protection born from pain. The legal precedent helped others. Nurses who'd had their work stolen. Educators whose innovations were claimed by others. My case became citation in their fights. Pain transformed into protection for others. Professional conferences meant navigating carefully. Sky attended some, working for equipment vendors. Now we maintained wide berths. Professional courtesy. Without personal acknowledgement. The best resolution possible. My new life included regular legal consultations, reviewing contracts, protecting new work, maintaining documentation, the cost of doing business when trust had been weaponized. Expensive but necessary. I mentored differently now. Clear boundaries, written agreements, protected materials. Still generous with knowledge, but never naive with access. The balance between helping and protecting. The purple journal stayed locked away. Evidence of how friendship could mask exploitation. Reminder that documentation worked both ways. That those who planned destruction often revealed themselves through their own records. Years of rebuilding had created something different but stable. Not the career I'd originally envisioned, but one built on hard-won wisdom. Protected, documented, bounded, sustainable. The nursing education community had learned from our conflict. Better policies, clearer ownership, protected innovations. My pain had created systemic improvements, cold comfort, but comfort nonetheless. I found peace in teaching others to protect themselves, in sharing hard-won wisdom, in preventing similar exploitation. Purpose born from pain, meaning made from misery. The scars remained. Trust came slowly. Boundaries stayed firm. Documentation continued religiously. But life moved forward. Professional success returned. Different, but real. My story served as both warning and inspiration. Warning about the cost of naive trust. Inspiration that survival was possible. That justice, however imperfect, could prevail. That rebuilding could happen. The parasite had been removed. The host had survived. Changed, scarred, but alive. Professional life continued with new awareness. Protected, founded, documented, real.